The movie begins with a guard talking about a legend called the Ghost Rider. This is about a very strong soul who has to do what the devil says. The Ghost Rider has to find a special paper called the Contract of San Venganza, which is very powerful and bad because it holds the power of 1,000 bad souls. But the Ghost Rider decides not to follow the rules and tries to escape from the devil. In the movie, there's a part where Barton Blaze and his son Johnny, who are both stunt performers, do tricks at a carnival. After the performance, Barton tells Johnny he was too showy and dangerous, trying to impress his girlfriend Roxanne. Roxanne then tells Johnny she has to leave because of her dad, but they decide to run away together after sharing a kiss. When Johnny gets home, he finds his dad asleep with a doctor's note about having cancer. Johnny is very sad and is fixing his bike when a man named Mephistopheles shows up. This man knows about Barton's sickness and offers to help. Johnny asks what he could give in return, and Mephistopheles answers, "Your soul."
Your soul.
Thinking the man crazy or sarcastic, Johnny responds, "Okay." Mephistopheles offers Johnny a contract, and when Johnny cuts himself opening it, Mephistopheles accepts this drop of blood as an appropriate signature. Johnny wakes up in bed with Barton, energetic and cheerful. Barton confesses to Johnny that he had been sick but now feels healthy as a horse. Johnny is stunned. Barton tries a new stunt at the show the next day, jumping through a ring of fire, but he comes up short and crashes. Johnny tearfully watches his father die while Mephistopheles laughs ominously. Mephistopheles approaches Johnny, promising that one day he will come for Johnny's services when needed. Johnny spots Roxanne by the hilltop tree but decides not to approach her and instead rides away. 10 years later, Johnny has become the most famous daredevil in the world. He is attempting a new stunt at a sold-out stadium, jumping over a row of parked semi-rigs. Johnny clears the targets on the field but comes up short on the landing, wrecking his bike and sending him crashing into a wall. Johnny's team, with his best friend Mac leading, quickly come to help him and finds Johnny is dazed but not hurt. The crowd roars with cheers as Johnny gets back up. Later, as Johnny and his crew are on the road, Mac is confused, believing that there is no way Johnny should have survived that crash. Mac suggests that maybe Johnny has a guardian angel, and Johnny mildly suggests that maybe it's something else as he looks out the window and sees his face turn into a skeleton with a flash of lightning. Meanwhile, another strange figure, Blackheart, arrives at a Hell's Angels club out in the desert. He proceeds to kill nearly all of the members with a single touch. Mac and Johnny arrive at Johnny's apartment, where Mac tries to talk Johnny out of doing this new stunt because it seems too risky. Mac is worried because Johnny is becoming increasingly reckless. Johnny responds that he's merely looking for a sign and a second chance. Back at Hell's Angels bar, Blackheart is approached by 3 elemental spirits, Gressel, Wallow, and Avenging, and recruits their help to find the contract for San Venganza. The spirits agree even though they fear Mephistopheles, a name that enrages Blackheart. As Johnny prepares for his new stunt, a reporter approaches him for an interview. To his shock, the reporter is his old girlfriend, Roxanne. Stunned by her arrival, Johnny fails to answer any of her interview questions. Roxanne ends the interview abruptly and leaves before Johnny begins his jump. Mac joins Johnny on the ramp, relieved that Johnny has agreed to remove the cars from the jump. However, Johnny reveals he has decided to replace them with something else. As the stadium roof opens, 6 Black Hawk helicopters descend, injuring Mac, who demands to know the reason behind this change. Johnny explains his father, Barton, thought it would be cool. Johnny sets up his bike, his mind still distracted with Roxanne. Without warning, he throttles up and heads down the ramp. After a few seconds, Johnny completes the jump with a perfect landing, waves to the crowd, and then speeds off. Roxanne in her news van, driving down the expressway, encounter Johnny. He pulls a few stunts to make the van stop so he can talk to Roxanne. She relents, telling Johnny to meet her in her hotel's restaurant later that evening. A group of motorists, angry about the traffic stop, approaches to see what is happening. However, upon discovering Johnny Blaze on the freeway, they swarm around him, asking for autographs. Blackheart and his gang confront Mephistopheles, the man in black who made a contract with Johnny. Mephistopheles warns them against trying to take the contract of San Venganza and threatens them with the Ghost Rider. Unafraid, Blackheart reveals through this conversation that he is Mephistopheles' son. As Johnny prepares for his date with Roxanne, he notices his hands glowing bright red. He washes his hands, only to observe steam rising off his palms. Johnny steps out into the alley to find a brand new motorcycle revving up and waiting for him. Mephistopheles appears, revealing that he has decided to invoke Johnny's services. He explains that he has been keeping Johnny alive all this time so that this day could come. Mephistopheles compels Johnny to mount the new bike and sends him off after Blackheart, offering to return Johnny's soul if he succeeds. Johnny's new bike sets off at such speed that it burns a trail of fire and destruction through the town. Blackheart and his gang arrive at a train yard where the night watchmen confront them. Curious, Blackheart states that this land was once a cemetery. The watchman explains that St. Michael's Church moved the graves, and Blackheart kills him. Johnny arrives and dismounts the bike, thrashing in pain. Fire erupts from his feet and hands as Johnny roars with a mixture of pain and evil desire. Finally, his head bursts into flame, revealing a skeletal skull. Johnny Blaze has become the new Ghost Rider. Blackheart confronts Ghost Rider and sets his elementals to fight. Ghost Rider grabs some chains off a nearby wall to use as weapons but gets stopped when Gressel drives a truck into the building. Ghost Rider erupts from behind the truck, lighting one of his chains on fire and trapping Gressel. Gressel screams in pain as he turns to stone and dissolves. Ghost Rider whistles and his motorcycle appears. He touches the gas cap, and the motorcycle transforms into a fiery skull and chain entity, much like Ghost Rider himself. He rides through town and spots a young woman being mugged. He grabs the mugger, who stabs him, but the knife merely melts off in Ghost Rider's body. Ghost Rider commands the mugger to look into his eyes. The mugger screams in horror as his memories of past crimes come back to haunt him. When this torture finishes, Ghost Rider tosses the mugger aside. Ghost Rider ends his drive through town on the outskirts, obviously growing weaker by the oncoming morning. He arrives in a cemetery and slowly but painfully changes back into Johnny Blaze. Johnny collapses at the headstone of his father, Barton. Roxanne, angry at Johnny for standing her up, reports on the chaos in town. During the investigation, the police found a license plate belonging to one of Johnny Blaze's bikes. Johnny finds help from the caretaker, who discovers him. Initially skeptical, Johnny eventually relents. The caretaker explains that the Ghost Rider serves as essentially the devil's bounty hunter, tasked with hunting down anyone escaping from hell. Furthermore, he reveals that the Ghost Rider only appears at night or in the presence of evil. Johnny recalls his encounter with the mugger, and the caretaker clarifies that his greatest weapon, the penance stare, forces anyone it targets to experience the pain of every sin they have caused. The caretaker shares the story of the last Ghost Rider and the town of San Vegan's souls. He also reveals that the spirits following Blackheart are the hidden fallen angels cast out of heaven. Johnny leaves to take care of some business against the caretaker's advice, who warns him that he will be protected on the sacred ground such as the cemetery. Seeing the devastation caused by the previous night's events, Johnny meets Roxanne, who is very mad at him. Johnny returns to his apartment and does some research about fire elements, gaining a minor degree of control over his new powers. Roxanne arrives, demanding explanations from Johnny. Deciding to be honest, Johnny shares his story, but Roxanne does not accept it, thinking he's either lying to keep her away or he has gone insane. Johnny steps outside, where the police arrest him, believing him responsible for the previous night's murders. Johnny denies any involvement, but the police throw him in a holding cell. Inmates recognize Johnny and decide to attack him out of revenge for never seeing him fail at his stunt shows. One young inmate stands up for Johnny but gets knocked aside. The remaining inmates jump on Johnny, who effortlessly transforms into Ghost Rider and defeats them all. Ghost Rider steals the lead, Doug's jacket and gloves, making small spikes emerge from the metal detailing. He proceeds to burn through the cell bars and leaves. He hesitates for a minute in confronting the young inmate who stood up for him, then proclaims the young man to be innocent and walks off. Blackheart appears at St. Michael's Church, asking the minister about the contract of San Venganza. The minister denies any knowledge, so Blackheart kills him. Upon learning that Ghost Rider is active again, Blackheart sends Abigail to deal with him. Ghost Rider reclaims his motorcycle and escapes from police custody. The cops quickly pursue and eventually trap him in a dead-end alley. Ghost Rider merely tilts his motorcycle and rides straight up the building. Roxanne, in a building across the block, is packing to leave when she looks out and sees the strange display. Ghost Rider confronts Abigail on the rooftop, but they are ambushed by a police helicopter. Ghost Rider uses his chains to throw the copter away from the roof so they do not interfere. He then attempts to catch Abigail just like he did with Gressel, but Abigail uses his wind powers to escape. This gives Ghost Rider an idea. He ignites a chain and spins it, causing a cyclone that pulls in Abigail. After a few seconds of resistance, the wind spirit is destroyed. The police attempt to apprehend Ghost Rider as he comes down from the roof. He attempts to resist until he spots Roxanne in the crowd. The flames on Ghost Rider's head grow fainter as he approaches Roxanne. The police see this as an advantage and open fire with their weapons. Ghost Rider conjures a wall of flame and escapes, retreating to the cemetery. The caretaker finishes the story of the contract of San Venganza by telling Johnny about the previous Ghost Rider, a former Texas Ranger named Carter Slade. Slade becomes corrupt and makes a deal with Mephistopheles to save his life. Carter Slade witnesses the events at San Venganza, takes the contract, and hides it. The caretaker theorizes that Carter was buried with it. Roxanne returns to Johnny's apartment, where she meets Mac. Mac discusses Johnny's recent odd interests, leading Roxanne to browse through Johnny's books. This convinces her that Johnny's stories are true. Suddenly, Blackheart appears and kills Mac. When Johnny comes back, he finds Mac dead and Roxanne held captive by Blackheart. Johnny transforms into Ghost Rider and tries to use the penance stare on Blackheart, who laughs it off, claiming it doesn't affect him due to his lack of a soul. Blackheart proposes to free Roxanne if Johnny delivers the contract to him at the ruins of San Venganza by morning. Johnny pledges to unearth the entire cemetery if necessary, but the caretaker breaks his shovel to reveal a rolled-up parchment in the handle, the contract. Johnny decides to take it and confront Blackheart. The caretaker, thinking Johnny's unpredictable nature might give him an edge, summons a mysterious horse from the shadows, mounts it, and bursts into flames, revealing himself as Carter Slade, the previous Ghost Rider. Both riders set off for San Venganza. Carter escorts Johnny and advises him to stick to the shadows, declaring it's the end of the line for him as he has nothing left, and rides off into the sunset, ready to face eternity for his actions. As Johnny approaches San Venganza, Wallow, the last of the hidden, ambushes him. Wallow tries to drown Johnny, who transforms into Ghost Rider and superheats the water, evaporating Wallow. Blackheart appears with Roxanne in custody but releases her as Johnny hands over the contract. Before Blackheart can take the contract, Johnny transforms into a Ghost Rider and attacks. Blackheart fights off Ghost Rider's attacks and reads the contract, commanding the spirits within the town to join him. The spirits emerge and unite with Blackheart, who then proclaims, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Roxanne attacks Legion with Carter Slade's shotgun. It wounds him but does little to slow his advance. Johnny catches the shotgun and infuses it with his Ghost Rider powers, turning it into a Hellfire weapon. The blast disintegrates Legion, but he effortlessly begins to reform. Johnny realizes that Legion now has all 1,000 souls from San Venganza trapped within him, making himself vulnerable to Ghost Rider's greatest weapon. He transforms into Ghost Rider one last time and traps Legion long enough to use the penance stare. Legion screams in agony as the sense of 1,000 souls pass through his body. Legion reverts to Blackheart and dies, the penance stare having succeeded once again. Mephistopheles arrives and congratulates Johnny on his success. He offers to take back the Ghost Rider powers, but Johnny refuses. He decides to keep the powers and use them against Mephistopheles' evil. Mephistopheles is angry but cannot take back the power by force and vows to make Johnny pay. Johnny and Roxanne share an emotional farewell as Johnny swears to head out and go wherever the road takes him. The movie ends.